Hi everyone, my name's Catherine, and today I'll be talking about why the border wall is not a good foreign policy decision. So, the idea of President Trump's border wall is rooted in racism and xenophobia instead of the protection of the American people. The border wall is a terrible foreign policy decision because while it may quell the number of illegal immigrants that come into this country, the ways the Trump administration have gone about convincing the American people and the rest of the world that it is a good idea have shown the administration's true colors and agendas and has permanently stained America's reputation of being an inclusive melting pot of a nation. President Trump has repeatedly used xenophobic and racist language to paint the people of Central America as terrorists in order to scare Americans into supporting the wall. President Trump has never been afraid to speak without a clue as to the facts or lack thereof that surround his argument. A Washington Post article titled President Trump's Error-Filled Holiday Tweets on the Border Wall, written by Glenn Kessler, cites President Trump's various verbal attacks on the people of Central America, painting them as terrorists in order to scare American citizens. While in Iraq on December 26, 2018, Trump was quoted as saying that, quote, "We have the terrorists also coming, fellas, through the southern border." The Washington Post article goes on to rebut that, quote, "A recent report from the State Department showed there was little credible information suggesting terrorists were trying to enter the United States through the southern border." The fact is that the majority of terrorist suspects are apprehended at airports, not our country's borders. This is yet another example of Trump speaking without fact or knowledge of what he's saying in order to gain support and create fear. Trump's rhetoric of fear does not just begin and end with his Twitter account, but it lingers throughout sources that the American people turn to for safety and security. The official website for the Department of Homeland Security, in an article entitled Walls Work, describes a day in which, quote, "A violent mob of 1,000 people stormed our southern border. Agents who responded to the area ultimately dispersed the crowd, which had become assaultive, and apprehended several individuals." So these words, such as violent, mob, and assaultive, create fear within everyday people, and consciously or not, paint a picture of these people who are trying to escape from the horrible conditions in their home countries, and they're painted as evil liars trying to leech off of what the United States has to offer. Not only does the president use fear as a tactic to gain support for his wall, but he also uses the idea of a wall as a means to add to his own perceived power. An article on foreignpolicy.com entitled Walls Don't Work by Pamela Kyle Crossley states that, quote, "Trump has used the prospect of the wall as a tool to demonstrate his coercive power and tighten his grip on income and expenditure to the point that the government has been throttled into unconsciousness." The idea of a wall is not being executed with the main idea being American protection, but a showcase of the power the president has. The same foreignpolicy.com article goes on to state that, quote, "When Trump's plans for the southern barrier have become dust and blown away, he will continue as long as he is in office to induce Americans to build walls of the mind." He has been able to gain support from almost the entire Republican Party to the point where those who speak out against him in the past are now rallying for support of him and his ideas. President Trump does not want a border wall to ensure the security of our country. He wants a wall to show that he can conquer an entire people and that he holds all the power. Another reason why the border wall is a horrible foreign policy decision is because of the atrocities currently happening at our borders because of this manufactured fear. Recently, Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came under fire for her comparing of the immigrant detainment centers at our borders to concentration camps. A number of people questioned if she was correct to use that term associated with such a horrible time in history. However, experts say that she is in the right. An article from NBCnews.com titled "AOC was right to compare Trump's border internment camps to concentration camps," written by Andy Zeisler, states that, quote, "Concentration camp historians agree that using the general term concentration camp to describe conditions at the border is accurate." The same article goes on to report that, quote, "5 immigrant children have died since December in detention facilities described by politicians, legal advocates, and human rights organizations as being overcrowded and unsanitary with meager food and extreme temperatures. The treatment of these people is horrendous, and the rest of the world can see it except for our president and his supporters." So this brings us to, what do other world leaders think of President Trump and his border wall, And how is this affecting our country's foreign policy? A New York Times article entitled, "When Trump Meets with World Leaders, He Won't Be the Only One Thinking About 2020," written by Peter Baker, published on June 25, 2019. The author quotes Ivo Dalder, a former ambassador to NATO under President Obama, as saying that he does, quote, "think most world leaders, including our closest allies, have given up trying to influence Trump and US policy and are now waiting for a new administration." It's no secret that President Trump has an explosive temper and is rock solid in his ideas, no matter the factuality behind them. Many world leaders have all but given up trying to work with our president and influence him simply because they know that they can't. So the same New York Times article continues to say that, quote, "At this stage, world leaders hope that he won't be reelected so they don't have to change their basic assumptions of US foreign and trade policy." So President Trump's border wall has changed the fabric of how the United States deals with illegal immigration. Instead of citing actual policy and facts, the president has used fear and coercion in order to gain support for the wall from American people as well as his Republican counterparts in Congress. The ensuing human rights crisis at our borders has alienated our country even more so from other democratic countries and leaders around the world. The border wall is an awful foreign policy decision because it shows that the United States does not care about other nations' peoples and what they are running from. All it shows is a nation with a government rooted in manufactured xenophobia and racism.